The Holy Gospel according to Luke, the 18th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Then Jesus told them a parable about their need to pray always and not to lose heart. He said, in a certain city there was a judge who neither feared God nor had respect for people. In that city there was a widow who kept coming to him and saying, "Grant me justice against my opponent." For a while he refused, but later he said to himself, "Though I have no fear of God and no respect for anyone, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will grant her justice so that she may not wear me out by continually coming." And the Lord said, "Listen to what the unjust judge says. And will not God grant justice to his chosen ones who cry to him day and night? Will he delay long in helping them? I tell you, he will quickly grant justice to them. And yet when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth?" This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
You may be seated. In Mark Twain's novel, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Huck is constantly getting into some kind of trouble. Each chapter is a new problem for him to get his way through. And after one particular mess, his guardian, Miss Watson, takes him in the closet of his room. So he's in the closet of his room to pray because she's hoping that God can straighten him out because clearly she isn't having any luck with Huck. She needs God to take over. And Huck says, "Miss Watson told me to pray every day, and whatever I asked for, I would get it. But it weren't so. I tried it. Once I got a fish line, but no hooks. It weren't any good to me without hooks. I tried for the hooks 3 or 4 times, but somehow I couldn't make it work." So Huck gave up on prayer, saying, "There ain't nothing in it." We might not be as honest as Huckleberry Finn, but we've probably all had the experience of praying and not getting the answer that we wanted, not getting the answer we hoped for, or not getting it in the time that we really needed God to be functioning a little bit quicker. And as much as we want to pay attention to what Jesus said, that we should pray always, it can be hard to keep at it with a sense of enthusiasm when you feel like your prayers aren't getting the response that you're hoping for, especially when you're praying about something that's a lot more important than fish hooks. Our gospel for today is one of those conversations that Jesus had while he was on the road with his disciples. He'd been teaching them about how to best be his faithful disciples. And then some Pharisees asked Jesus, when would God's kingdom come? They wanted more details. Okay, we don't need to talk about discipleship. Let's talk about when the kingdom's coming. And he told them that the kingdom of God comes, but not with signs that you can observe. People are not going to say, "Look, here it is." They're not going to say, "Look, it's over there." You want to see the kingdom of God? He says, the kingdom of God is already here among you. And then he said to the disciples, "The time will come when you will long to see one of the days of the Son of Man, when you will want to see the fulfillment of God's kingdom. And people will tell you to look for the Messiah in one place or another, but don't go looking. Days are coming when you wish you could see just one of the days of the Son of Man, but you won't see it. That day, when it comes, you will know how lightning flashes across the sky, bringing light from one horizon to another. That's how the Son of Man will be when his time comes, like a flash of lightning. It will be a flash across the sky, and Jesus says it will be like the times of Noah when he built the ark, or like when Sodom was destroyed. It will be a huge surprise to everyone. And he said, you're going to be longing for it, but you won't know when it will come. At that time, no one on a rooftop should go down into the house to get anything, though. No one in a field should go back to the house for anything. You remember what happened to Lot's wife. So people who try to save their lives, he says, will lose them, and those who lose their lives will save them. He goes on to say that one night, 2 people will be sleeping in the same bed, but only one will be taken, the other will be left. 2 women will be together grinding wheat, but only one will be taken, the other will be left. And the disciples said, well, we need to know God. We need to know Jesus. Lord, when will this happen? And Jesus says, this is really gross. Where there is a dead body, there will always be buzzards. You never memorized that one in Sunday school, did you? Where there's a dead body, there will be buzzards. In other words, there will be signs, things to watch for, but you won't necessarily know when or how the kingdom of God is going to come. And then he tells them a parable about their need to pray always and not to lose heart. So the disciples have been hearing how they're supposed to be faithful. They've been hearing about the coming kingdom of God, but we can't tell you exactly how or where or when. Don't get too excited. There may be signs of dead bodies, so watch for that. You know, things are going to happen, lightning in the sky, but don't do anything too quickly. And then he says, it's important to pray, and it's important to keep at it constantly. The Pharisees and the disciples both wanted to know about the end times. They were curious about how and where and when, and Jesus didn't want his friends to give up. In the midst of all of that conversation, he didn't want them to suddenly say, well, we'll never know, we might as well just move on. He wanted them to understand that even when things seem uncertain, God is listening, and God will always be concerned about justice. So he told them the parable of the widow and the judge. And most of the time, people have described this parable as being the story of an oppressed woman. We imagine she's this neglected widow who has no one to lean into, no money, no resources. We tend to assume she's had bad luck, she's poor, she's helpless. We root for her because we've been conditioned to see widows as being helpless and needy and maybe even exploited or abused. We also root for her because we don't like the judge. He must be the bad guy in this story. He doesn't care about God or other people. He says so flat out. He is unjust according to the story. So of course we want him to lose. Most translations of the parable have the widow seeking justice. But the Greek term tells us that she is looking to be avenged. Does she sound a little different to you now? She's looking to be avenged. It's legal language. It has the connotation of setting things right or being vindicated. And she is really passionate about wanting this to happen. And we really don't know if she's good or bad. Maybe her adversary is right and just more polite than she is. But as far as the story goes, the widow might as well be destitute and oppressed and desperate. But she could also be wealthy and powerful and vengeful, or somewhere in between. On the other hand, we are told by the narrator of the story that the judge is unjust. But in the same way that we don't know if the widow is righteous or not, we really don't know that much about the judge. Is he unjust by denying the widow her cause, or is there something else about him? And to top it all off, the English doesn't do justice to the story, because the original Greek says the judge decides to deal with this woman because he's afraid she will give me a black eye in her coming. The language that he uses is the language of wrestling or of boxing. It's fighting imagery. And so he's afraid that if he doesn't do something for her, he's going to have a bad image and maybe injured. Brittany Wilson says we are probably meant to laugh at this picture of a lowly widow pummeling a recalcitrant arbiter of justice. But as New Testament scholar Scott Spencer rightly recognizes, the humor in this scene is not one of comic relief. Jesus' parable is meant to encourage us to laugh at those who wield their power unethically. We laugh, though, in order to challenge such figures and ultimately to offer a different way. Jesus said, listen to what this wicked man is saying. If he's willing to back down, how much more readily will God have compassion for those who are praying to him both day and night? If this guy, who is a lousy human being, will hear this woman's case and will take action, how much more so will God do? He will grant them justice. Jesus' his parable is, it seems, about prayer. But it is also about a certain kind of prayer, a prayer for fairness and equity. And so if you imagine this, a hall of justice and a big room with a dais and a seat for the judge sitting there, and all kinds of petitioners coming in, all gathering around, yelling out what they need. Some have lawyers, some don't. And the woman is in that crowd every day, and when the court convenes, she wants vindication against an unnamed adversary, asks for it, shouts for it, and he ignores her. Maybe she follows him home. We don't know. But in any case, he answers. Now, there's a fellow that I know. His name is Mick. You're going to hear about Mick probably more than you want. Mick is in his very first semester of seminary. Very first. He was in my high school youth group when I was an intern. So when he was 16 and I was 24, I was the person in charge of his youth group. He's going to seminary. He sent me his first sermon this week and said, will you read this and tell me what you think? Which is a nervous thing to do. And I did. And he came up with, I don't know if he did it on his own, but he came up with this really good thought, and that is, what if we've gotten it all wrong all along? Where we've seen ourselves as this woman, poor or rich, whatever her story is, whether she's being kind or just a real nag, and then there's this judge, and we think, well, we must be the woman praying, and God must be the judge. And Mick said, what if it's the other way around? What if God is the woman, pestering every single day, every hour of every day, saying, why won't you listen? Why won't you be just? Why won't you take care of my children? And we ignore it for as long as we can. It's an interesting idea to see the two roles switched and to see, who are we really? Are we the one who's in need, calling out, asking for justice, or are we the ones who can offer kindness and care and compassion, and yet we don't listen to God's call, at least not all the time? Whatever the truth of this parable really is, one thing is clear, is that we are not supposed to sit quietly and wait for Jesus to come back while all around us the world is being oppressed and mistreated. Instead, we're to resist injustice with as much resolve as that widow, and to resist it with as much gumption as that judge. We are to resist injustice. We are to mimic their constancy, always coming back again and again. We forget that this is not just a story about prayer, but it is also about the importance of resisting discouragement. That we know that even as we are called and as we call others, there are times when things don't work out, and Jesus says, don't be discouraged. Keep coming back. He said in Luke, prayer is not a passive activity, but one that actively seeks God and pursues God's will. So if this is about prayer, it is about prayer that's praying with your voice, with your mind, with your heart, with your soul, with your hands, and with your feet. Yesterday was an interesting day. No matter what side of politics you are on, the news was interesting yesterday, and there were people that were out and they were trying to make a difference. And rather than talking about that and risking accidentally tripping into the wrong place, because I know that you all are looking for justice and fairness in the world, we just may not all come at it in this congregation from the same direction. So, a different story. In the early 1950s, Rocky Flats plant was built near Denver. And the facility's primary mission was to produce plutonium pits. And these pits, I don't know how big they were shipped to other facilities in other states. The trains went right through Denver and on their way mostly to the south, where they would then be assembled into nuclear weapons, right through the middle of the city of Denver, from the 1950s until well into the 1980s. 30 years later, in the 1980s, my college roommate and I, along with our pastor and members of our congregation, had joined together with hundreds of other people, and we were going to attempt to encircle the Rocky Flats plant by holding hands. The goal was to get it to go all the way around and to actually block the railroad tracks so that they couldn't take the plutonium out and through communities where it was hurting people. It was an incredibly interesting day for me. We were fighting for them to close, and by that time, people in Denver knew that plutonium contamination of the area had been going on for 30 years, but it had never been reported to the government. It was going through the most intensely populated areas of Denver. The contamination levels were the same as if somebody had dropped a bomb on that part of the city. Exposures of a large part of the population was making people sick. Folks who lived near that place were sick. And if you look up in Wikipedia, Rocky Flats, Colorado, what you will find is that production there was halted after a combined raid in 1989 by the FBI and the EPA, and they say it was stopped by years of protests. So maybe we didn't make it all the way around Rocky Flats that day. We did make the news. We were on TV, not me, but people were on TV, and they made the major newspaper stories, and we helped to draw attention to something that was harming people in our community, which was unjust and which needed to stop. And if people had given up, what might have happened instead? But years of protest by people who had a passion for the health of their community, for the health of the planet, made a difference. And so, my dear friends, whatever your passion is for justice, for righteousness, for fairness, for caring for people who are in need, for all of the things of ministry that we claim to be our responsibility, do not give up. Do not give up, because God is on your side, and God is calling you to do new and different things. Galatians said, "Let us not grow weary in doing what is right, for we will reap at harvest time if we do not give up." So then, whatever we have an opportunity, let us work for the good of all, and especially for those of the family of faith. There is so much good that we can be doing, and it can happen in little ways, it can happen in big ways. It absolutely can happen in prayer. So keep praying. Keep being passionate for things. Keep trying new things. Keep looking for ways to act out your faithfulness. Follow your passions to help other people. Remember the poor and the weary and the hungry and the aching, those who are in need. Keep praying and do not be discouraged. Goes okay? Goes all right with you? Yep. Okay, do you guys know anything about wrestling? Okay, what do you know?
It's like fighting people?
It's kind of like fighting people, yeah. Anybody else know anything about wrestling? Have you ever seen wrestling on TV? There's two kinds. There's the kind, yes, go ahead.
I kind of do.
Yeah? You kind of do wrestling?
I used to, but now I don't.
But now you don't, okay. Well, there's one kind of wrestling where they dress up in crazy costumes and they do all kinds of acrobatic stuff, and a lot of it is pretend. Hulk Hogan, not a real, I'm trying to think, who is a Hulk Hogan from now? Anybody know? Okay, it's crazy, but they do these wrestling things, and it's really all very staged. There's another kind that they do in high school and college and at the Olympics, and that kind comes up in a Bible story. Do you believe that? Wrestling in the Bible? There's a guy named Jacob, and he's on a trip, he's trying to figure out what to do with his life, and he ends up in this place all alone, by himself. He's going to have to camp out. He doesn't have a tent or anything, so he's got a rock that he's going to use as a pillow, and he's going to take his robe and kind of, shift it around like a blanket and sleep there in the middle of nowhere. And he's trying to get to sleep, and all of a sudden, somebody comes along in the dark and starts wrestling with him. And they grab him. Yeah, they grab him, and they keep trying to pin him down, and he keeps trying to wrestle back, and this goes on all night long. And finally, he says, the one guy says, "Let me go." And Jacob's like, "Well, okay, but I'll let you go, but you have to tell me who you are first." Because they've been doing all this wrestling in the dark. And come to find out, who do you suppose it was? Got any guesses? No, I know. It's crazy. God has sent a messenger to come and wrestle with Jacob. And Jacob figures out that he has seen God. And that this wrestling, sometimes our conversations with God are more like wrestling and less like hugging, you know? And you have hard things to say. And so he'd wrestled with God all night long. And before it was done, Jacob's leg got broken. He gets his leg broken. And for the rest of his life, he has a little bit of a limp when he walks. But it's a reminder to him that he's seen God and that he is a different person because of his prayers and his conversations with God. It's a crazy story, but God can be as close to us as somebody who would wrestle with us in the dark. And sometimes we might come out of our conversations with God saying, well, now I have to do a hard thing. Or maybe now I'm struggling. But whatever happens, God is going to be with you that close all the time. All the time. Yeah, that close, exactly. And so when Jacob leaves, he names that place Peniel, which means I've seen the face of God. And we remember this story hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years later because we know what it's like to be in a relationship, in a friendship with God. And he is how close is he? He's this close, yes. All right. Thank you guys for coming up, and you can go to your designated places and people now.